and we've got ourselves enjoying sunshine and clear conditions heading into the evening. All right, well, Maria, going to be staying east of the U.S. This weekend, at least the core of it, but any kind of threat, certainly enough to monitor. We're going to take a look at what impacts Maria could bring for us in the next few days.
because you're blind as shit. But this is another update.
Coming up on Weather Geeks, I talk with senior hurricane specialist Brian Norcross as he reflects on 25 years since Hurricane Andrew. Can't believe it.
You know, some ways it seems like it was just yesterday. I can picture things perfectly. In other ways, it was so long ago.
Yeah.
No cell phones, no nothing.
A different time, and we'll reflect on that and see what it means for today's hurricane forecasting on Weather Geeks.
A lot of damage, destruction across Puerto Rico. We're looking in San Juan from Thursday, where you can see some of the damage left behind from Maria. You had folks who had to walk in waist-high water, floodwaters bringing down trees, power lines down, 100% of the island essentially without power. Just a mess, and the storm also blamed for at least 13 deaths. All right, let's get the latest on what's left with Maria, where it's headed next, and what else is out there in the tropics. We send it over to Liana and Carl.
Thanks so much, Alex. And Carl, I mean, I think everyone's wondering, what is Maria going to do, and when is Maria going to finally go away?
There's a very strong possibility that it's going to be an ocean storm going forward. That is to say, not making landfall anywhere. But it could get very close to the southeast coast, and we're certainly going to see the waves, really large waves, and everything that comes along with that. So there's going to be a lot to pay attention to here in the next few days. Right now, it's a Category 3 storm. It's holding its own, 125-mile-per-hour wind. Things are slowly improving in the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. See a night approaching here from the east, and there's a closer look at the storm as it's now moving away from the Turks and Caicos right in there. Even closer look for you. They got a pretty big hit overnight and early this morning, and these are the same. So very much like Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, a couple of really bad hurricanes in the space of a couple of weeks, unfortunately. And as you see the sun going down here, we see a lot of relief in the cloud, and you can really see those thunderstorms bursting about that eye wall right in there as they rotate around the center. Sometimes you see a lot more features late in the day as the sun is going down.
And as meteorologists, I mean, this is so fascinating to see this. And even when you zoomed out, I mean, we took the big picture where we could see the remnants of kind of a post-tropical Jose to the north, and just these massive storms, and you can see just how large and just insane they are. It's otherworldly.
It's a lot of energy out there. Yeah, there's no question about that. And so this thing is going to be slow to come down in intensity. The wind shear is going to increase, so that's likely going to bring it to a Category 1. But look how little it moves between Sunday and Wednesday. That's a really big part of the story going forward. So here's Jose right there, and then here is Maria, and you've got this little bit of an avenue, an area of low pressure that sort of connects the two and helps to draw Maria off to the north there initially. But then right here is a ridge of high pressure that builds in and acts like a blocker in football and prevents Maria from going any farther to the north. That's why it really slows down Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and even into part of Thursday. And then that ridging actually starts to build out a little farther to the east. Now, some of the modeling is showing that as that happens, it deflects the storm a little more to the west and gets a little bit more over parts of the Outer Banks and North Carolina. So obviously, every little bit that it moves farther to the west makes a big difference in terms of the impacts. That raises the stakes for wind and for surge and for heavy rain. Right now, most of the guidance is suggesting that it's going to be offshore, but that's still going to mean significant impacts, and then it starts to really come away into Thursday and Friday. Here, by the way, is the GFS model, and we see a similar pattern except for the GFS showing it moving a little more to the west. So there's still uncertainties about the long term. But we know there's this tremendous area of very large waves that's going to be affecting the coast for several days because the storm is really slowing down. And as those big waves come in and they come in on top of each other, that can create coastal flooding. So that's going to be a worry on Highway 12 in the Outer Banks. Many parts of the Mid-Atlantic region, you've got beach erosion to be concerned about. You've got rip currents to be worried about all up and down the coast. All of that is going to happen, but it could be even more significant if the storm is farther west. And again, if it is farther west, then that means we get into more of the wind and the heavy rain and all of that. So that's a look at the European ensembles. Most of the guidance is now offshore, but there is still this possibility that it gets a little bit closer.
All right, thanks so much, Carl. Thanks for joining us. Weather Underground is up next.
Coming up next on Weather Underground, Hurricane Maria's future is still uncertain as it slowly moves northward. We'll break down what the threats could be to the U.S. Regardless, see why Maria, combined with what's left of Jose, could bring dangerous conditions to the East Coast this weekend. We take you beach by beach from Florida to North Carolina to show you what to expect. Plus, the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico still reeling after a devastating blow from Maria. We talk live with FEMA about new and arriving today aid by air and sea. And it's the first day of fall. You're telling us how you feel about the season of change. Weather Underground starts right now. And welcome in everyone to Weather Underground. Alex Wilson is off. I'm Mike Bedison. In case you didn't know, today of course is the first day of fall. We've changed seasons. For many of you it's welcome news, but still remember, it's hurricane season and we still have Hurricane Maria grabbing the headlines, causing destruction across the Caribbean, of course. Moving its way to the north. Let's take a live look at Calypso Beach in the Bahamas. Tropical storm warnings in effect for the central and southeastern Bahamas. And conditions expected to stay pretty nasty there for some time. And then we could have some impacts in the United States. But what will those impacts be? We're joined now by hurricane expert Dr. Rick Knabb for more what's coming down the pike with Maria. We look at it now, still Category 3, Dr. Knabb, so it still warrants our attention.
Yeah, this is a very formidable hurricane, and it's not only strong, it's large, and it's not moving very quickly. We'll talk later in the hour how this compares to other storms that have gone through the area between Bermuda and North Carolina. We do have a Hurricane Hunter plane on the way in from the northwest, Mike, so we'll be able to take a look at the data later in the show. The last few visible images of the day show a pretty impressive hurricane, and that is a scary sight. It is north of the Turks and Caicos, but they're still getting some windy conditions, and the storm surge is coming down. But it is a very symmetric storm, and this, by the way, this is high-end Cat 3. It wouldn't take much more for this to eke out a little more time at Cat 4. So very, very strong hurricane. And wow, last few shots of the day really show those overshooting tops in the eye wall on both sides of the hurricane.
Is that a sign of maybe some strengthening?
Possibly, yes.
Yeah.
The more symmetric it looks, the more vigorous the convection is on both sides of the eye wall, the more that pressure could be dropping. And I also wanted to zoom in on Puerto Rico here in the visible imagery to show we still have some lingering isolated showers. And as we've talked about here on the Weather Channel during the day today, we've had this flash flood emergency associated with that dam in the northwestern part of Puerto Rico where they had to evacuate people because of the lingering flooding issues and the weakening dam. They had to get people out before water might start really coming down the hill. So been a very, very rough time in Puerto Rico.
2 days since it made landfall there, and we're still dealing with the residual impacts of the weather. Dr. Knabb, thank you very much. And adding to the anxiety in Puerto Rico today, that dam in northwestern Puerto Rico suffering some structural damage following the deluge from Maria. Officials rushing to get people on buses from two towns and get them out of harm's way. While in San Juan, the airport filled with people trying to get out of Puerto Rico. Our Paul Goodlow is there.
We're at the San Juan airport where lines are long, but people are patiently trying to get off this island. We heard quite a few stories today.
It's really difficult because we don't have communication with the airline. The system is down on the other airline, so we're just trying to see what they're gonna do with our flight, if we can book elsewhere so we can then have another flight and then go to Orlando. That's what I'm trying to do. If I can get, like, example, New York and then fly back to Orlando, I don't mind doing it. I just want to get out of here.
We also ran into storm trackers Justin Drake and Simon Brewer. They were in the eye wall of Hurricane Maria.
It was really intense. The power and the cell reception went out pretty quickly before the winds really even got that strong, and we found a good place to park our vehicle, and we stayed in our vehicle the whole time, and town just started getting ripped apart around us, trees snapping, power utility lines snapping, saw lightning in the eye wall, incredibly strong wind gusts that were just kind of shaking the car.
And while the hurricane is gone, the aftermath, including getting people off this island to wherever they're going, well, that continues as we head into another week here in Puerto Rico.
Thank you very much, Paul. If you've been unable to reach a loved one in Puerto Rico since Maria hit, you can reach out to the Territory's Federal Affairs Administration. Send an email, and just one email, to this address, the number 1 at Maria, the number 1 at prfaa.pr.gov. And there's a number to call as well, 202-800-3030. 3133 or 202-778-0710. And we'll again show you these numbers a little bit later in the show as well. If you're DVRing the show, just hit pause right there and you can grab those numbers. Well, let's talk a little bit more about what happens now with the future of Maria. Our experts are here, Dr. Nab, Dr. Navarro. Obviously, the concerns, for mainland United States are going to be what happens with the center. Will it ultimately stay offshore, which is what we've been forecasting, or could it come a little bit closer, cause some worse impacts?
Yep, and regardless of how that turns out, we already know that we've got a moderate risk of rip currents along the southeast coast today, and for the most part, the National Weather Service is highlighting a high risk of rip currents everywhere, Florida to North Carolina, throughout the weekend. So that's because of all the waves that Maria is already generating and that are going to arrive on the East Coast as we go through the weekend. So by Monday, it's really starting to get up to the north, and into early next week, by Tuesday, it's overtaking the wave field that Jose generated. So the two systems combined mean the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, you're going to have nasty waves and boating conditions for the foreseeable future.
Have you seen anything different in the models today from yesterday that gives you that moment of pause? Say, hold on just a second, that fourth and fifth day, maybe a little bit different than we originally thought?
Well, so it's interesting. The models were fairly to the east, but if you look at this morning's runs, they've all trended further to the west, except for the Euro. The Euro went back to the east, which is where the NHC official forecast is. So there's still some discrepancy here and there. They're wobbling a bit back and forth, but we know the Euro's been the more reliable model, and I think the trend is still generally to the east, but they have shifted quite a bit, so we've got to watch.
Why the Hurricane Center maybe is favoring the Euro a little bit more than the GFS?
Well, but I think they also paid some respect to the significant shift in many of the models to the west today. Yeah. And so kind of...
Because Hatteras is in there now.
Yeah. So I think, in general, it looks a little farther west than yesterday, but it is kind of unusual for the models to kind of switch places. But that's why the humans are in the mix here, to provide some consistency to it. But we're leaning a little farther west now than we did at this time yesterday. But the European ensembles have been kind of holding firm with just a slight possibility of coming ashore in North Carolina, but also a possibility of it going very close to Bermuda. And I wanted to show the actual run of the European main model run, because it's not as smooth of a curve as you might presume. So we can get this to run. So watch it go through between Bermuda and North Carolina by Wednesday, but then wham! There it goes, right off to the east as that trough comes near the East Coast by the following weekend. So it's just really hard to tell from all these model solutions how close it will get to the coast and how long it'll spend there.
Right. Subtle changes could bring that very close, if not over, North Carolina before it makes the turn.
Absolutely. It's all about that timing on when that trough actually arrives. And sometimes our forecasts 5 days out are not as accurate on the timing. There could be a lot of discrepancy there. So it's going to be a close call, I think.
And we've seen the fluctuations in forward speed. So.
Oh, absolutely. Look at the differences in speed in some of the models, and that TVCN, that's kind of an average of many, many models. You can see it kind of doing a little bit of a loop. So a lot yet to be decided about this, but don't rule out tropical storm conditions in North Carolina.
All right, thank you both very much. And coming up still here on Weather Underground, find out why the crew of this boat headed out into the teeth of Jose's waves on purpose. Plus, it's the first day of fall, yes! But in a lot of places, it feels a lot more like summer. But the aspens are changing color. We'll have a look at the temperatures when we come back. Well, Jose may be weakening off the coast of southern New England, but still producing some rough seas, and this was Nantucket Harbor, where members of the U.S. Coast Guard at Brant Point conducted night training in the large waves. Wow. Talk about queasy stomach, right? But hey, perfect opportunity. Mother Nature providing you the exact conditions that you could face in a life-threatening situation where you have to actually be out there doing a live rescue. So good to see them out there doing some cool training. But man, what a view, huh?
I
no,
feel a
thank
little
you.
sick kind of watching that. Just thinking about being,
right?
No thank you.
The good news maybe about Jose is after 70 advisories, the Hurricane Center finally wrote their last advisory today.
Yeah, they were a little bit comical in the advisory. We're like, we think 70 is enough.
Yeah,
we're done after this.
It was the longest lived storm of the season so far.
Yeah, it's been something, and I believe one of the top 5. I have to check that, but I mean, very long-lived storm. 70 advisories is quite a few, but this is the last one. Finally, this storm is going to be degenerating and basically just losing its circulation and energy here over the next couple of days. But that's not to say that there won't still be impacts here, because we're still gusting up into the 30-mile-per-hour range. Some of these yesterday hit nearly 70, 60 in some places. So this has been causing some issues across southeastern New England. And Mike, that rip current threat is going to be high throughout the week. And then with Maria now coming up the coast in the same area, this is going to be a prolonged impact here on the beaches.
You know, I wonder about, even up to like Bar Harbor, Maine, where leaves are now starting to change color. People be out on their boats, taking a look from the water. It's dangerous for boats to be out there too.
Absolutely. We got to watch for those really big swells. We might have some prolonged beach erosion as well. So the coastal impacts here are non-zero, to say that.
And all the way down to Delmarva. That's a good piece of real estate there. Dr. Navarro, thank you very much. Okay, not all bad news across the Northeast. Hey, you got some sunshine today. Boy, it seems like it's been at a premium for us this week, right? Hey, take a look at the first day of fall in New York City. You hit 82 degrees today. Your normal high is about 73. In Pittsburgh, you topped out at 88 today. Wow. Your average high is 72. Like the mix of blue and clouds there in Pittsburgh. Good look there over the bridges. All right, let's take a look at summer versus fall, because I know we flipped the calendar. Just doesn't feel like we have, right? Look at the temperatures tomorrow across the Northeast. All these dots on the map expect temperatures to be above average by 5, 10, or 15 degrees. The dots there are in red. And all you really have to do is look at the color codes on this map, right? A lot of oranges, lots of reds. Temperatures mid to upper 80s, some 90s in there as well. We'll do 90 in D.C. on Sunday, 88 in New York. We'll be 81 degrees in Boston. On Monday, still hot. Buffalo, 90 degrees for you on Monday, right? 91 in Cincinnati. In Detroit, we'll do 89 degrees. Incredibly hot again on Tuesday, by the way. A little bit cooler now, Boston and New York, but look at the 80s and 90s still holding on there in the Queen City. We'll 91 again. Wednesday offering a little bit of cool down now, back into the 70s in Detroit and Buffalo. 10 degrees cooler for you in Cincinnati than just the day before. And of course, we're asking you on Twitter about the change of seasons, the first day of fall. How do you feel about it? We gave you a couple options, okay? You miss summer, you love fall, or maybe you're already looking forward to winter. Well, fall's winning with 47% of the vote right now. And a lot of you, by the way, your comments along the bottom of the screen there. But what are you saying about it? Well, Mallory says this: it doesn't take the first day of fall to make me excited about apple cider donuts. I'm with you there, Mallory.
That's the truth.
Oh.
Apple cider donuts are the
taste them. I can taste them right now, right? Cindy writes, because fall, Halloween, caramel apples, color and cooler. Yeah, we're looking forward to that. It's not here just yet. It's still hot. Pia writes this: the bugs are gone, the leaves change color, pumpkin spice is no hot weather after maybe this weekend. But for now, it's still here.
90 degrees in Buffalo? Come on.
Right now, people are like tuning up their snow blowers in shorts and t-shirts, right? All right, stick around. A lot more to come here on Weather Underground. More on our top story, the future track of Hurricane Maria and why they're still concerned for the U.S. East Coast. And we take you to the Florida Keys, where a major act of kindness is helping people.
We are going to be bringing down a number of emergency supplies that were basically dictated by the governor of Puerto Rico's office. Main problem is there's no power on the island, and the question is how fast can you get the power back up? We're bringing large-scale generators with us that can power necessary facilities, hospitals, communication centers, etc. We're also bringing an assessment team of engineers in the power supply industry to do a reconnaissance of what the condition of the power system and the fastest way to get the power system back up.
That New York Governor Andrew Cuomo talking about the relief effort from New York going to Puerto Rico. And then stateside, the damage and heartbreak left from Hurricane Irma will take years to get over in Florida. But one good thing to come out of this tragedy is the outpouring of support neighbors are showing for each other. The Weather Channel's Justin Michael shows us how one business is literally putting people back on the road to recovery.
Music to the ears of Annabella Dolan. Road debris from Hurricane Irma left a gaping hole in her tires.
He's already changed two. I've already lost it to metal in the road. There's a lot of trash and debris up and down. It's terrible.
This garage in the Florida Keys on the ocean side of Overseas Highway and Marathon opened its doors to help.
These guys, I couldn't believe that they were doing it for free, and everybody that I've told said, come on down.
Nearly 100 cars a day have come into Dean Christensen's garage, and his mechanics get them back on the road, no charge.
I think what comes around goes around. You help people out, they'll give you a hand.
I think it's wonderful, but you know, the people down here all are together helping each other. It's just been amazing.
It's all to keep people moving on the road to recovery.
Everybody's helping everyone.
People heading south back into the Florida Keys on US 1, and with every single mile, there are hazards like nails on the road. In fact, we're not immune. Over the last 2 weeks, 2 of our vehicles have had to have 2 tires replaced. Just a reminder to keep your eye on the road. In Marathon, Florida, Justin Michaels, the Weather Channel.
Love that. Free tire repair. That is fantastic. By the way, it's day 4 of the rescue effort following Tuesday's massive earthquake in Mexico. Thousands involved in the dangerous and painstaking searches for those trapped within the rubble. More than 275 people have been killed by the 7.1 magnitude quake. And among those involved in the effort, Frida, a rescue dog that works with Mexico's Marines in Mexico City. One of the biggest search and rescue efforts continues at a textile factory. NBC's Mariano Tencio updates us on the massive rescue effort in the city.
Overnight on this very site, there were 2 rescues. There was also a rescue in another part of Mexico City, about 8 miles from where we are now. So that has renewed hope and life here on the rescue sites. You have across the country around 6,000 people, from the military to the Marines to rescue workers, doing what President Peña Nieto is calling priority number 1, and that is saving lives. In this textile factory, we've seen people remove debris by hand, remove cars, remove beams. It still remains a very active scene.
Amazing how many people are there to assist, right? Take a look at the forecast for recovery. Has a lot of showers and storms still remaining. Temperatures in the 70s through the weekend and then beyond. Overnight low temperatures down into the 50s. If there is anybody still left in debris, this does become a concern, because if they're trapped in there without water or food and temperatures that are this cold, hypothermia becomes a problem at night, but afternoon temperatures are certainly very comfortable. Well, still to come here on Weather Underground, we're going to tell you why Hurricane Maria, a perfect example of why you can't just focus on the forecast cone. Plus, it's the first day of fall, and we're already talking snow. You see where it's already snowing in the U.S., okay? Let's take a live look at Tampa, Florida. We know it's not snowing there. In fact, it's going to be a pretty nice sunset for you tonight. 75 degrees currently, but 75, not the norm these days in the east. We'll show you the temperatures that are very hot through the weekend. Yep, it may be the first day of fall, but it looks like the first day of winter atop California Mammoth Mountain. A record-setting snow season last year, and this year off to a very snowy start. It actually snowed yesterday on the last day of summer. First powder falling here. I mean, this is remarkable, right? Hey, don't grab your skis, though, just yet. Ski season won't begin at Mammoth until early November. But maybe it's a taste of things to come, right? How about Donner Summit? First snow of the season there, too. Cold front brought in the light snow here to the Sierra. Then it fell enough just to coat the area, but didn't close any of the mountain passes. Snow remains in the forecast this evening as well. It's just weird to think, isn't it, that we're in hurricane season right now. It's just, I mean, we just wrapped up summer and it's already snowing there. Hey, thanks for staying with us. This is Weather Underground. I'm Mike Bettis. Alex Wilson has the evening off. Let's talk about hurricane season. Maria still grabbing the headline. Swells for Maria, sending boats against the shoreline here in the Turks and Caicos. The islands are struggling with the heavy rain from Maria with the storm surge. More than a foot of rain is there as well. We're already struggling with the damage from Irma. So it's not been a good scenario for us here at all. The islands like Dominica, by the way, devastated by Maria, and the islands, the Prime Minister says, actually looks worse than a war zone. The island nation has seen at least 15 people die, countless others now missing. Leaders are pleading for everything from baby supplies to water for the 72,000 people who call that island home. Tragic to see what has happened there. Let's talk more about Maria's future track with Dr. Rick. Now, it's Cat 3. It's close to being a Cat 4. What have you seen today that changes the game, if anything?
Well, it's staying a little stronger, a little longer than many of us thought it would, and it even has a chance to briefly get back up to Cat 4. And we're going to find out soon enough whether or not that's happened, because the Air Force Hurricane Hunters are en route from Savannah. They're flying in from the northwest, and they'll be in there probably before the show is over, Mike, in time for that intermediate public advisory at 8 p.m. And we got to get a good handle on how strong it is, but also how wide that wind field is becoming, because that's going to be a big factor, like it was with Jose, with how much it can push the ocean around, cause the waves, the surf, and the rip currents.
We are expecting it to expand, though. The forecast does cause this wind field to expand as it drifts its way north.
Yes, now that's typical for northward moving systems near the east coast of the U.S., but it's already starting off pretty large. And what I also see in the last few images of the day, that inner core, you see those overshooting tops as the sun sets, wrapping around the center. So it is still a very, very healthy hurricane, and strong, large hurricanes can push the ocean around. And already we've got moderate risk of rip currents along the southeast U.S. coast. These waves are going to get even higher as the weekend goes along. So expect high risk of rip currents, North Carolina down to Florida for the most part throughout the weekend. That will expand northward. And the European model ensemble still clip North Carolina, even though they show possibility of being otherwise to the east near Bermuda. But also that cone includes North Carolina, because it's a slow motion over the next 5 days as that slowly weakens. And when the steering currents are not really, really well defined, look out for changes.
One thing that I noticed on that is that cone toward that 4th and 5th day begins to widen in both directions a little bit more, where yesterday it was more of an eastward turn here, Dr. Navarro. So what have you seen in the models today that changed for you, that you thought, okay, that makes sense now why Hatteras is now back into the cone?
Yeah, if we look at the GFS model today, we can compare that over the last couple days, and some of the members here are coming very close to North Carolina. So that gives us some indication that while many of the solutions still look to be out at sea, we still can't rule out the possibility, because some of our models are showing that solution there in North Carolina. So this is what the ensemble looks like. These are all the same model, but they're just tweaked slightly differently to give us a little bit of a different solution. It gives us an idea of what variability is present in the atmosphere. The yellow colors are showing all the different members here. That's just part of the family of models here, going basically off to sea. But then if we compare that to the next model run, notice not only does it get wider, all those red colors now are spreading a bigger distance, there's more here heading into the coast of North Carolina. So that's giving us an idea, hey, we cannot rule out this possibility. Some of them are showing that turn, but then there they went back out to the east, east as far as this morning, still showing a general idea that this track right here is fairly probable for the track of that system out to 7 days. But if we compare that to this morning, this was that shift that we were talking about. Notice that the majority of those light green colors came back towards the coast. That perks our ears up a little bit, if you will, because looking at this is showing us many more members that are still showing potentially direct impacts here along the U.S. coast. And if we just pick 2 of them out here, notice there's a pretty big difference. A 50-mile, maybe 100-mile difference here could mean a lot because one of them is way out to sea, but one of them here is right off the coast of North Carolina. So that's giving you an idea of what we're expecting. That's why the cone changes shape and gets a lot wider. And Dr. Nab, we now have part of North Carolina that's almost basically in the cone.
Yeah, and one thing that is different about this Maria forecast than many past hurricanes that have been moving northward between Bermuda and the east coast of the U.S. is this is going a lot more slowly. I mean, it looks like it's going to make a lot of headway over the next 5 days. This is the 5-day cone. But this is nowhere near the amount of progress that other past hurricanes have made. And the reason for that is the steering currents are not as well defined for Maria as they have been for some past hurricanes. So what I did was I picked out some past hurricanes, recent years, that have been at the latitude that Maria is right now, as far north as Maria is. But watch at how far north these past hurricanes have gone. When Isabel was just east of where Maria is, the 5-day cone, back in 2003, the cone was wider. But you notice it went a lot farther north. Then here's another example from Kyle, 2008, almost in the exact same spot as Maria. And look at what the 5-day cone had. It was almost twice as fast.
I was going to say it's almost double the distance. That's accelerating really quickly off to the north.
But that's typical. Here's Bill, 2009, almost the same spot, zipping around to the north and the east. Here is Earl, 2010, similar, clipping North Carolina. But it was, in 5 days, going to be all the way up into Canada. So the point here is that if it's going to be moving a lot more slowly than these past storms, even Sandy, it's moving more slowly than Sandy was. The point here is, in the next 5 days, it won't even be out of here like these other storms for the most part were. That means there's a lot more time for changes to the steering currents, changes in the timing between Maria and the upcoming trough next week. So don't be shocked if this cone has a different shape than it does right now over the next few days. And you could have a tropical storm watch up for North Carolina as soon as Sunday because you got about a 1 out of 5 shot of tropical storm force winds starting on Tuesday.
Yeah, absolutely. So we certainly can't rule out impacts, and just be careful with that slow movement. We've seen that now a couple of days, but impacts for sure. Mike, over to you.
Well, and at the beaches, you know, this weekend is going to be one of those weekends where the temperatures are going to be really nice. Skies will be sunny. You'll want to be at the beaches. But what do the swells and the propagation of wave mean for places, say, like Daytona Beach? Forecast is in the 80s. Sunday looks like a particularly nice day, but the winds will generally be out of the northeast. You have a lot of waves being pushed into Daytona Beach. You could have some issues with whip currents here at Daytona Beach. Just keep that in mind as you head out there. Keep the kids in maybe ankle-deep water, and that is it. Let's head farther north here, a place like, say, a Myrtle Beach. Now, your wind direction here is going to be more paralleling the beach, so you may not have as much rip current issue, but you're going to have waves that are propagating to the south. And so just keep in mind here that the winds will be up a little bit for you here, and you're going to have waves that will be pushing either parallel or maybe even a little bit away from the beach. Now we go to Wrightsville Beach here, and for us, we'll have a little bit more onshore flow here. Not so much parallel, but more onshore. So watch for also the possibility of getting some rip currents here, and you'll want to be in the water with temperatures in the mid-80s. But talk to those lifeguards. They're going to know if there's going to be a rip current danger for you at the beach. All right, still to come here on Weather Underground, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, still reeling after a blow from Maria. We talk live with FEMA about the new aid arriving by air and sea.
too, because
Welcome back in, everyone, to Weather Underground as we follow Hurricane Maria for you, a powerful Category 3 hurricane. A lot of convection now spinning up around the center as well. So this is a solid Cat 3. It's only 5 miles away from being 5 mile per hour away from being a Category 4. And by the way, still notice that we have some stormy weather down around Puerto Rico on the extreme southeastern periphery of this. But notice where Maria came right through the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico before exiting, but unfortunately, landfall in Ibacoa here, a Category 4, winds at 155 miles per hour when it made landfall with a very low pressure at 917 millibars. Power's been knocked out to the island. They're running on backup power right now, generator power. But look at all the power plants, 13 in all, that were taken out by this hurricane with winds of at least 120 miles an hour in at least that in every section of the island. Well, as Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands work to recover from Hurricane Maria, FEMA's top priority is to provide life-saving resources to residents in FEMA's Region 2 division, and they're on the ground. They're coordinating with governors and emergency management agencies to assess the damage and move in supplies to the needed areas. FEMA Region 2 Coordinating Officer David Haas joins us on the phone now with more on how they are handling recovery there. David, thanks for being with us. Tell us about this first step and the areas that you're trying to get to right now.
Okay, well, the first step right now, predominantly for Maria, St. Croix was hit the hardest, with Irma hitting both St. Thomas and St. John's before that. So we've kind of got a three-island disaster that we're currently working through. We've already done an aerial assessment of St. John's, St. Croix, and based on that assessment, we're starting the flow of commodities into the island is both St. Thomas and St. John's. Correction, St. Thomas and St. Croix. We've got both airfields opened up on St. Thomas and St. Croix for daytime operations. So we've established the air bridge and we're flowing in food and water, tarps, everything we can via the air bridge. We just got great news today that St. Thomas's port opened up daytime only. In fact, we had a ship waiting off the coast that's going to be pulling in either this evening or tomorrow morning with food and water. And it'll also be a facility we'll use to berth all our emergency responders. So that's fantastic. And we should also have other berthing ships arriving with both supplies and locations for responders right now. We got one USAR team, national USAR team, who's focused predominantly around, and they'll traverse most of the island. We don't see a SAR mission needed in St. Thomas and St. John, so our focus is there. Obviously, the power piece is a big deal, and we're working hard with our Department of Energy federal partner and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to both work a temporary and long-term solution.
Hey, David.
And working that forth. Sorry.
Hey, David. Yeah, Dr. Rick Nab. I've interacted with folks in FEMA, including Region 2, for many years, and I'm pretty sure I could speak for all of you in saying that this isn't something that you are making up on the fly. I mean, FEMA works with the states and the locals to plan for these kinds of scenarios, and the states and the locals have their role. How has your plan been put together, and how is it being carried out? What are you doing versus what the local governments there are doing?
Well, everything comes from the local government. That's kind of FEMA's policy. So we are connected with FEMA, Virgin Islands Territory Emergency Management Agency. In fact, we're co-located in their emergency ops center with our initial operating facility and our team here. Right now, on in that location, we probably have about 25 folks just working the command and control of the event. You know the name of the game. It is life-saving, life-sustaining, and then protection of property. That hasn't changed, and those continue to be both the governor's priority and our priorities to work forward.
So, David, after getting in the resources, the water, the food, what's the next step as far as getting these areas back and up and running?
Well, we'll start with temporary fixes. We're working to get a couple temporary hospitals in place, both on St. Thomas and St. Croix. The Blue Tarp mission that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is famous for, we're working, and obviously the temporary power piece with pushing emergency generators all over will be the next step. Then we really, again, I want to emphasize that if we could all say this together, 1-800-621-FEMA. I need everybody affected by the storm to really call or go to disasterassistance.gov and please register, because then we'll implement our individual assistance program to assist survivors, and then obviously working with the government of the Virgin Islands to work our public assistance program.
All right, David, thank you very much. Appreciate you talking to us this evening, and best of luck down there in the islands. We'll be right back. brand new video in here to the Weather Channel of landfall of Maria in eastern Puerto Rico. This from storm trackers Simon Brewer and Justin Drake, capturing that landfall on Wednesday in Iapocoa here. And you can see just peeled back the roofs, tore down some walls here, debris flying everywhere. The danger, you've said this before, Dr. Nab, that's one of the dangers. Flying debris can be such a hazard when you've got a big wind maker.
Yeah, you put somebody in a wind tunnel, they might be able to survive 100, 120, 130 mile an hour winds, but with stuff flying around, you might not survive tropical storm force winds. So it's the debris that kills people and does the damage.
Yeah, you see lines down there. Watch that again.
Wow.
Just takes it right off.
Yeah. That's why you don't want to be outside in even a tropical storm, never mind a major hurricane.
Wild stuff. New video in tonight to the Weather Channel. All right, thanks for joining us here on Weather Underground. Joined by our experts again, Dr. Navarro, Dr. Nab, talk all things Maria and tropics. What can we say? I mean, this is still a formidable Category 3.
And it's on the doorstep of being Cat 4. Don't rule that possibility out. And we have a Hurricane Hunter plane on the way in. They're flying in from Savannah, coming in from the northwest. And I think within the next hour of Weather Underground, we'll probably have some data from inside the eye to see if the pressure has gone down and if those winds have come up to Cat 4. Wouldn't take much. But 5 miles an hour difference isn't going to mean a huge difference in what the outcome is going to be. It's already a powerful and large hurricane that is going to affect areas outside this cone no matter what, with at least the rip currents where we're going to have a high risk from Florida to North Carolina tomorrow and then Sunday.
And it's impressive that right now this storm is battling a lot of shear from the southwest, but it's still holding together, maintaining itself, again, on the verge of intensifying. So it's impressive that this storm is really holding together as well as it is.
Yeah, the larger hurricanes can fend off a lot of hostility.
Yeah, they can, can't they? One thing that I noticed is a little bit different on this cone than, say, from 24 hours ago is that day 4 and 5, it starts to widen a little bit more. It's not as a smooth a cone as it once was.
Yeah, now part of that is the models and therefore the humans are forecasting a slower motion out of days 3, 4, and 5. So the cone kind of just hits the brakes and widens because of the errors at day 4 and 5. But that is a legitimate representation of what could happen because the slower the motion, the weaker the steering currents, not as room for changes and variability in Maria's motion and in the next couple of days how the models behave. They could be moving around a lot more the next couple of days like they have since yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all the timing of these things. And when you have multiple players, multiple things that you're tracking, then it gets really complex. But we know for sure the wave field here is going to be very high. So we are expecting at least coastal impacts from some very large waves. And look at these numbers. These are 15 to 25 feet.
And a potential slower motion means longer duration of waves beating on our shoreline.
Yeah, that means the fetch will be pushing towards the same spots over the same time period, for the same distance for long time. And that means a real significant pileup of the water near the coast. It enhances the rip current risk and just makes for a really long duration wave event when you consider that Jose's effects haven't gone away, and then here comes Maria, the northeast, the ocean is just going to stay angry.
I think places like coastal North Carolina, we know very susceptible to waves there, right? And we saw a washover with minimal storms, let alone a hurricane.
Yeah, and they could get tropical storm conditions. There's already a 1 out of 5 shot of sustained winds of tropical storm force in North Carolina starting Tuesday. So they could have to go under a watch on Sunday, and they could even get the center to come near them if one of these possibilities is right for them.
You guys up for answering some questions?
Let's do it.
All right, let's answer some questions tonight. So you're sending those via Twitter using the hashtag WTV. Dan writes, will Maria bring worse beach erosion waves in the Northeast than Jose did?
I think that's an interesting question. Jose is still lingering out there, for those prolonged effects in Massachusetts, and Maria might stand the chance to do the same. So we could see, if it gets kicked out by that trough, maybe it won't be as bad. But if you combine the two, these effects are certainly going to be very long in duration.
Yeah, and I would say that individual spots might have different experiences in Maria versus Jose. Some might get worse. Some might get a little less, depending upon how the fetch is set up and exactly what Maria does, because every hurricane's different. And even if Maria is farther away, it could cause worse swells in some south-facing shores in New England than Jose did.
Thank you very much, Dan, for that question. This one tonight comes to us via Twitter from Adam. Will Maria be a threat to Florida? Make a sharp turn.
Threat to Florida, yes, in terms of the rip currents and the high surf. Sharp turn toward Florida, no.
Yeah. No crazy left turns from this one.
Thank goodness. But we, as you guys showed earlier in the show, we're still going to have wave propagation that goes into Florida. Rip currents do become a big risk through the weekend.
Yeah, and it's going to be good beach weather in the atmosphere. Just the ocean will be angrier as the weekend goes on.
All right, thank you all for your questions this evening. Keep sending them. Use the hashtag WUTV. When we come back, we talk more tropics with our team here. We're back in 60 seconds, right after your local on the 8s. Coming up in this hour of Weather Underground, where will Hurricane Maria head next? We break down this hurricane's uncertain future track and what it means for the U.S. And between Maria and what's left of Jose, the Atlantic is a little washing machine of waves right now. We'll explain why the routing for cruise liners and cargo ships will be extremely critical in the days to come. Plus, the latest on the recovery efforts in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, still facing massive power outages and ongoing flash flooding. And of course, it's the first day of fall. You're telling us how you feel about the change in season. Weather Underground continues right now. And welcome in, everyone, to Weather Underground. I'm Mike Bettis. Alex Wilson has the evening off, in case you didn't notice. Today's the first day of fall. Doesn't feel like. We'll talk about the temperatures here in just a little bit, but hurricane season still grabbing the headlines. Maria has caused widespread destruction across parts of the Caribbean, now pulling away from the islands as it moves north. We take a look at Calypso Beach in the Bahamas. For the central and southeastern Bahamas, waves are an issue. Look at the flag whipping in the wind there. Winds are high right now. This is a Category 3 hurricane. It's actually not that far off from being a Category 4. Our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, joining us right now for more details on Maria. You look at this thing, still looks good. It's looked good for the better part of a week now, right? Where do we go from here?
Well, we go slower than usual for a hurricane going between Bermuda and the east coast of the U.S. We're going to be dealing with Maria for several days now. It's only moving at 9 miles an hour. A lot of past hurricanes, and I'll show you some of those later in the hour, have been moving twice as fast when they start to make this turn and go up the east coast. But we're also going to be dealing with a large hurricane that's going to be slow to weaken, and in fact, it might not even be done strengthening. We have Hurricane Hunter airplane from the Air Force almost inside the eye. So before too much longer, we'll be able to share with you if it has reached Category 4 strength. But in any event, we've got a very large and powerful hurricane, a major. And again, Mike, what I'm seeing on the satellite tonight, as we head into the evening hours, oftentimes the hurricanes tend to perk up at night. Look at those purples, those thunderstorms starting to wrap back around the eye, getting better defined once again tonight. And so it might not be done strengthening. We thought it peaked last night, not so fast.
Could that become, there's no land interaction at all right now. Could those, walls of concentric convection become circular around the eye, do you think?
They very well could. It's in an environment where the water is plenty warm, and large hurricanes are pretty impervious to moderate wind shear that it might be experiencing right now. So it has every opportunity to maintain its major hurricane intensity for a little while. And because it's so strong and so large, the first problem we're going to have, and it started today and it really gets bad over the weekend, is a high risk of rip currents from North Carolina down to Florida throughout this weekend, and that spreads north Sunday into early next week.
And the issue is, the weather's a little atypical. Weather is very, very warm, very, very sunny, and the beach is inviting, right?
Like I said last night, hashtag use the pool.
right? for sure. Absolutely. I mean, that's life-saving advice right there. All right, obviously, issues in Puerto Rico. The push is on to evacuate 2 towns in the path of a dam that's failing following Maria's torrential rains. Officials urging 70,000 people to evacuate. And while at the airport in San Juan, the push is on to leave Puerto Rico. Our Paul Goodlow is among those people and shows us what he saw as our crew worked their way to the airport today.
We've made our way to the San Juan airport today, and let me kind of show you what we saw along the way. We still saw plenty of flooded streets, and people cannot drive through that, so traffic was pretty tough in many areas. We did see a few markets and stores that were open selling food, so at least that is it. And also, let me tell you, we weren't just in Old San Juan. We were in the heart of San Juan, where people live, neighborhoods, and they were still suffering. Power is out everywhere. We also came across a very long line of cars leading to one gas station that was selling fuel, pumping fuel. Not just lines of cars, lines of people holding gas cans to fuel their generators. When they say power is out to the entire island, that is not an underestimate. Again, the only chance that you have power is you are making it yourself through a generator. Here at the airport, though, there are a lot of anxious people waiting patiently to get off this island.
I have family over there in Florida. They don't know nothing about us. I was supposed to basically just go on vacation, but now I'm just trying to get out because there's no power. Supermarkets are closed. I do have water, but food is like running out.
My mom was like, you need to get out of there, but they only have 2 flights, 1 plane per airline. So, you know, our friend is in there. He's trying to get out. So we'll see what happens, if we're going to be able to leave or not.
Communication is still limited here across the island. Here at the airport, hardly any cell service at all. If you do plan to travel out, or you know someone who's trying to travel out, make sure they get here extra early. There's no guarantee these generators will stay up and running, which means planes might not be taking off.
Thank you very much for the update, Paul. By the way, if you're trying to check in on your loved one, you're trying to reach them, here is the recommendation. Send an email to this email address, Maria, the number 1, at prfaa.pr.gov. Or what you can do is call these numbers, 202-800-3133 or 202-778-0710. Provide your contact information and share as many details as you can with those numbers and with those emails about people that you're looking for, addresses, names, last time you talked to them. All right, let's talk a little bit more about Maria, what's going to happen. One thing we've been very, very concerned about, the waves. I mean, take a look at this, 30 footers out there, right? And that's just going to push its way closer and closer to the U.S.
Yes, and as those waves arrive on the southeast coast, and it's already starting today, it's going to get worse tomorrow, very high risk of rip currents, and that's going to spread northward. So, and that's going to kind of meld with what Jose has done to churn up the ocean. So it's going to be a long duration, bad beach time, bad boating time, and danger at the ocean. Don't go in if the lifeguards tell you to stay out.
And especially that threat for some gusty winds there along the places like the Outer Banks, all that onshore flow. I mean, it could be a pretty close call with this swiping just to the east here in some of these areas. So we can't rule out impacts just yet.
Slight shift today west?
Yes, for the most part, yes. Now, the European model has trended a little bit east, or at least has ended up on the east side of the collection of models, but we are closer to Cape Hatteras now than we are Bermuda. We were kind of splitting the uprights yesterday, but now things have trended a little closer, and with a large hurricane, if these model tracks verify, you could still get tropical storm conditions in North Carolina. Already, the chances of that are up to 20%. You might have to put up a watch on Sunday because it's Tuesday when those winds could arrive.
A slower movement. Let me ask you, is it harder to forecast hurricanes' future track the slower the movement?
That's a great question.
It's a double-edged sword, I think, because
it can go both ways.
Yeah, when the motion is slow, you're not going to have 1,000-mile track forecast errors because you know you're going to be in this general area. But it is reflective of the steering currents being weak and the motion possibly being erratic, so it can rattle around inside that cone at will, and the models can shift around. So we're a lot more susceptible to things getting a little closer to the coast when the steering currents are not as well defined.
All right, we take a look here at the little of 850 millibar Euro model. That paints a nasty picture for the Outer Banks for sure.
Yes, and it does hang a right late next week and weekend, so that trough is going to cool things off and get rid of Maria eventually. But the problem is that between now and then, what if it's a little closer? Some of the European ensembles go right over North Carolina.
All right, Dr. Nab, thank you. Dr. Navarro, thank you. And let's show you what's still on tap tonight here on Weather Underground. Falling temps, helping hand, and predicting waves. First up, it's falling temps. Today marks the first day of fall, but it sure doesn't feel like it, does it? We show you the incredible heat across the country and the numbers this weekend. Then, helping hand. After the worst of Hurricane Irma moved out, the First Response Team of America moved in. See how they helped out the town of Bonita Springs, Florida. And later, predicting waves, our experts come back to show you what goes into forecasting wave heights and how the cruise line industry is learning new strategies to protect its passengers and its ships from hurricanes. Jose weakening off the coast of southern New England, but still producing some rough seas. This was in Nantucket Harbor. Members of the U.S. Coast Guard Station Brant Point conducted, believe it or not, night training missions into this. I'm trying to think. Okay, you're in the Coast Guard, and your commanding officer says to you, "Hey, you up for a training mission?" And Jose, like, I'm I'm up for adventure, but man, that is something there, huh?
That's not for the faint-hearted.
No, absolutely not. But, you know, tip of the hat to the Coast Guard, doing some amazing work in some of the most extreme conditions, right? But let's talk, Jose. What's left of Jose? Goodbye, Jose.
Bye, Jose. Yeah, finally. It's been 70 advisories. What?
Stunning. It's the longest lived tropical system of the season so far, but the Hurricane Center has written their final advisory. This thing is extratropical now.
Yeah, it's about done. So it's going to be steadily slowing down and winding down here over the next couple of days. We're still going to have the threat here for some gusty winds and the rip currents, as well as some coastal impacts with that circulation still just staying offshore. But this has been causing some issues, in particular in Nantucket. Winds were gusting 50, 60 miles per hour yesterday. So this was akin to a healthy nor'easter in a lot of these places.
I think like over the last 5 days, they've had like 5 hours of sunshine in New England. Like it has been at a premium, but it's been dangerous. I mean, it's been windy. We've had a lot of waves. Rip currents still a huge problem.
Yeah, Mike, and you were mentioning, look at the extent of these rip currents threat all the way north to Bar Harbor, down towards Delmarva and into North Carolina. And this is going to remain that way with Maria now taking that same track up the East Coast.
Considering Jose, for the last couple of days, just been a tropical storm.
Yeah.
Maria's a Category 3 hurricane right now. So compounding potentially the wave impacts. Dr. Navarro, thank you very much. If you haven't noticed, by the way, on our set, it's all fall, right? It's pumpkins, it's leaves changing colors, it's cooler temperatures. Minneapolis, it's 93 degrees right now. Are you kidding me? Isn't that crazy? Mid-90s. At one point, the heat index in Minneapolis was 103 today. And that heat advisory in effect. First day of fall. St. Louis right now, you're 92 degrees, hit 95 for a high. Your average high temperature is typically right around 78 degrees. By the way, here's what you're saying online. Amanda says, yeah, quote, fall. We're in a heat advisory. That was Minneapolis was under a heat advisory. Northern Iowa was under a heat advisory today. That's nuts. Mike says this, I predict Nebraska's fall will be warmer than our summer. 97 degrees today. Mike, I'm not a betting man, but you might be right. It was really, really hot today. And we found some crazy stats for you today for this first day of fall. Let's take you far north. Let's go to Traverse City, Michigan, where today's high was 94 degrees. Your hottest temperature this summer was 88. Your hottest temperature this spring was 89. So check this out. Your hottest temperature, 2 hottest temperatures this year were actually in the fall and spring. Summer, you missed out. What happened for us here, right? Traverse City, just a crazy, crazy day for you today. Take a look at the Midwest. Still a lot of heat there. Some areas where it'll be a little bit cooler, but a lot of orange, a lot of red, and a lot of yellow on this map. Look at the forecast highs for us tomorrow. Chicago will be 88, St. Louis 90. In Kansas City, we'll be 88 degrees. How do we wrap up our weekend? Hot again, Minneapolis, 87, 86 in KC. There's the cooler weather for you back across the plains. Monday, starting your work week hot in Chicago and 91 in St. Louis. We're asking you, by the way, on our Twitter poll today. It's the first day of fall. How do you feel about it? Well, 28% of you miss summer. 48% of you, about 50% of you, love fall. 24% of you want to go right through fall and skip right to winter. What do you think, Doc?
I could not be more excited to bust out my sweatpants.
Well, William's saying New England fall colors and vacation pictures. I think that's what everyone thinks of when they think of fall. Hopefully it's here soon. Brian's saying, bring on fall! We had a hot summer here in Bakersfield, California, ready for a break from the heat. You're not alone, Brian.
I'm Jennifer Lopez. Not most glamorous look right now. I know I'm working in Vegas right now, but that's not really important. What's on my mind is what's going on in Puerto Rico. The devastation is beyond belief. Me and my cousins still haven't been able to hear from our families over there. What's foremost on my mind and many others is trying to figure out the best way to help. Our island Puerto Rico has been hit by two of the most devastating hurricanes we have ever seen, Irma and Maria. Today, Puerto Rico needs our help. I urge you to support and donate to the efforts of the First Lady of Puerto Rico, Beatriz Rosselló, Unidos por Puerto Rico. Together, we can help rebuild our island and the Caribbean. To donate, go to www.unitedforpuertorico.com.
Jennifer Lopez imploring people to do what they can for the island of Puerto Rico. Now, stateside, an entire community is still flooded out in Bonita Springs, Florida, after more than a week from Hurricane Irma. Crews still trying to clean up toppled trees off of homes, and Tattagolia and the First Response Team of America headed to the area to lend a helping hand.
As Hurricane Irma slammed into Florida, 1,000 miles away in Pennsylvania, the First Response Team prepared to deploy to the decimated Sunshine State.
Hurricanes are so powerful they can knock out power for hundreds of miles. So you need to come in self-sufficient with the right cutting equipment, extra fuel and water pumps, emergency lighting.
After a 19-hour drive, the team arrived in the Gulf Coast town of Bonita Springs, just 15 miles north of Naples.
There's neighborhoods that are still under feet of water. There's trees down everywhere. Power lines are down, and there's just destruction everywhere you go.
This home belongs to Margaret Gunther. It has been in her family for almost 70 years.
My family came down in 1950. It survived Hurricane Donna, and now this one. Most of it is still standing.
With trees covering the property and temperatures approaching the 90s, clearing up alone is out of the question.
That's why it's so important that the First Response Team is here to help people do the physical work that needs to be done here. The cutting up of trees, the removing of debris.
A lot of people are tired, don't know what they're going to do. When we show up, we give them a new hope to rebuild.
After a day of backbreaking work in extreme heat, the lot is clear and Margaret can return home.
Feels really great, and that I don't have to look forward to doing that. It would have been a very slow process. I couldn't have done it without you all.
And today is day 4 of the rescue effort following Tuesday's massive earthquake in central Mexico. Thousands involved in the dangerous and painstaking searches for those trapped within crumbling buildings. More than 275 people have been killed by the 7.1 magnitude quake. NBC's Mariana Atencio updates us on the massive rescue effort in Mexico City.
Overnight on this very site, there were 2 rescues. There was also a rescue in another part of Mexico City, about 8 miles from where we are now. So that has renewed hope and life here on the rescue sites. You have across the country around 6,000 people, from the military to the Marines to rescue workers, doing what President Peña Nieto is calling priority number 1, and that is saving lives. In this textile factory, we've seen people remove debris by hand, remove cars, remove beams. It still remains a very active scene.
Mariano Atencio reporting there. And how about this? This is Frida, involved in the rescue effort as well. This is a rescue dog, a lab that works with Mexico's Marines in Mexico City. One of the biggest search and rescue efforts continues at a textile factory there. Frida has actually been credited with saving more than 50 people, believe it or not, and has worked all around the world. Amazing dog right there. And by the way, if you want to go to social media, she's all over Instagram and Twitter, by the way, so check her out. What an amazing animal right there. Let's talk about the forecast for recovery, because there are some issues, especially with thunderstorms in the forecast and then overnight low temperatures that are awfully cool for anyone that still might be trapped within some of that debris. Overnight low temperatures in the 50s and hypothermia does become an issue. Still to come here on Weather Underground, we'll tell you why Hurricane Maria, a perfect example of why you can't just focus on the forecast cone. And it's the first day of fall. And you know what? We're already talking snow.
Responding by storm, powered by Ram trucks. Guts, glory, Ram.
Yes, it is the first day of fall, but it looks more like the first day of winter. This is Mammoth Mountain. Snowed yesterday, snowed today. This all after a record-setting snow season last year. You've gotten off to a quick start here for sure. Last full day of summer, first day of fall. Like, that's just nuts, right? Hey, don't grab your skis though just yet here in Mammoth. Not expecting the season to start until around November 9th. But they're getting a nice head start. I mean, it's just a sign of maybe good things for you for the ski season. How about this? How about Donner Summit? First snow of the season, dust the Sierra here. This is great stuff. Cold front brought the light snow. Enough fell to coat the area, but didn't close any mountain passes, and snow remains in the forecast day. Didn't need chains on the tires or anything like that, but man, wild scenes, right? Hey, thanks for staying with us here on Weather Underground. I'm Mike Bettis. Alex has the evening off tonight, and we are still following up against the shore in the Turks and Caicos here. The islands really struggling with the surge from Maria, the rain from Maria, the winds from Maria. A lot of issues have happened all across the Caribbean, and now it's pulling away from Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas. Doesn't mean that the issues are not over. How about islands like Dominica here, devastated by Maria? The island's prime minister says, quote, looks worse than a war zone. This is amazing. I mean, just some of the devastation you see here. At least 15 people have died, countless others now missing. Leaders are pleading for everything from baby supplies to water for the 72,000 people who call that island home. Our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, is with us right now. And we've mentioned this many, many times on this show, Dr. Knabb. It's so hard to get relief to these island nations, and so many of them have different homelands, right? So, you know, like Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, you have the British Virgin Islands, you have some French territories down there. And so it can become just a cluster of things. I mean, it's just difficult.
Yeah, it sure seems like this is going to have to be a serious international cooperative effort.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, if any part of the world can work together on a hurricane recovery issue, it's this part of the world, because all of these countries work so well together in issuing the forecast and sharing data and in preparing everybody before the hurricane hits. We got to do the same after the fact. And it really does break my heart, because I know so many of these people have visited these countries, and it's so hard to see the damage and see what people are going through.
You've been down there, you've toured these countries. You do, when you were the Hurricane Center director, you did hurricane awareness tours there. But I think after this season, there are probably going to be a lot of lessons learned, I imagine. And
yes.
we hopefully... Yes. We learn and we get better for the next one.
Yes, because it is not just about the forecast and not just about getting through the hurricane. It's about getting through the aftermath, and this is where it really gets difficult for months to come.
Let's talk meteorology here. Category 3 hurricane still Maria, pulling away though from Turks and Caicos and Bahamas. That's a good sign, but it's still rough there.
Yeah, and that's good that the conditions are improving there. But the bad news is that the hurricane hunters are now all the way through the eye one time, and the pressure has come down a few millibars. Haven't had a chance to peruse all of the wind data yet, but when they went through, it's down from 959 to perhaps closer to 953 or so. Okay. We'll have to see. So we'll update you with the intermediate.
Which means the winds could conceivably come up as the pressure comes down.
They could. It's either that or the system is continuing to get larger. The pressure might drop as it expands in size.
Well, at the very least, we wouldn't expect the winds to come down.
No, probably not. Probably not. But we do expect it to go northward. The models don't agree on exactly where it's going to go. The European model is just one example of how it might slow down before it finally heads out to sea. But that's just the European's main model run. Mm-hmm. The ensemble members from the European do have possibilities that include North Carolina, and so does the cone itself. So as it slows down, it could meander in there, it could change a lot, but bottom line is, first up is North Carolina for the possibility of tropical storm force winds as early as Tuesday, and this weekend, high risk of rip currents Florida to North Carolina.
Yesterday, people in North Carolina were probably keeping their fingers crossed, saying, okay, we look good. Today, things change a little bit. Dr. Knabb, thank you very much. Dr. Navarro with us now to talk a little bit more about the model forecast here, because things have definitely changed today in some regards. What have you seen with GFS?
Yeah, so we're seeing some of these models shift a little bit to the left here, a little bit closer to the U.S. coast. That gives us some cause for concern, because that would make the impacts here in a place